And this witch hunter is apparently searching for Rowena. And we're going to talk about another witch hunter or witch hunters searching for Scottish witches. So we're going to talk about witch prickers, which is a fun thing to say.
Yeah, so I was like,
and it was a part of daily life in 17th century Scotland to fear witches. And why were people so afraid of witches then? Well, things weren't always that great, and people attributed bad things happening to witches' superhuman, mysterious, or extraordinary powers. And this was across all classes. Burdened with significant debt, the landowners frequently suspected that even their poorer tenants were turning to black magic to retaliate against how they were being treated. Witches also allegedly injured or caused the death of their neighbors, made them tremble or sweat, prevented people from reaching their destinations, kept crops from growing, and set barns on fire. Like, women can't have hobbies. People at this time also just deeply believed that witches made pacts with the devil, had sex with him, renounced their baptism, and worshiped the devil in large groups with plans to subvert authority. They also believed that after you got in cahoots with the Dark Lord, your skin would be marked to forever show your alliance. The belief was so popular that a profession sprang up around finding witches with these marks. And they were called witch brodders. I don't know if it's broader or it's Brodders, and it's Scottish. So I'm thinking it's broader.
I think so.
But the easier thing to say is just witch pricker, and it's funnier. Yeah. And so witch prickers claimed they could identify witch marks, even the invisible ones, because you couldn't, the devil sometimes marked things so you couldn't see them. And they could identify them by pricking the body. Hence, witch pricker. The needle was like a hefty crochet hook, though. It wasn't like a sewing needle. It was like a giant ass fucking pin. And the accused were stripped and shaved to find any possible marks. Often the mark was hidden in an area like the armpits, under the eyelids, or in private areas and cavities. But, so if you get stabbed with the pin, right? So if you get pricked and it doesn't bleed and you don't have any pain, then you know it's a witch's mark, and that's a sign of the devil. I do like this one theory that there were actual witches' marks that were tattoos given during pagan religious ceremonies. Ooh. And there's very little documentation of tattooing in Western Europe before the 18th century, but the early Christians in Britain really liked giving tattoos. It was so popular that they had to pass a law banning it in 787 AD. So as cool as a reason for that, I don't think that's the reason that people, had marks on them, but it'd be really neat if they were actually finding like witches' marks. No. So the Reverend John Bell described the mark as the witch mark is sometimes like a blue spot or a little tata, or reed spots like flea biting. Sometimes also the flesh is sunk in and hollow, and this is put in secret places, as among the hair of the head or eyebrows, within the lips, under the armpits, and even in the most secret parts of the body. I myself have seen it in the body of a confessing witch, like a little powder mark of a bleu color. I think that's blue. Somewhat hard and withal insensible, so as it did not bleed when I pricked it. The Reverend Robert Kirk said, a spot that I have seen as a small mole, horny and brown colored, when a large brass pin was thrust, both in buttock, nose, and roof of mouth, till it bowed and became crooked. The witches, both men and women, neither felt a pain, nor did bleed, nor knew the precise time when this was doing to them, their eyes only being covered. So that Reverend basically saying that they had a mole and they would poke it and it wouldn't bleed because it was a mole. Obviously, a number of reasons could explain why a person could be insensitive to the witch pricker's needle, including dead nerves, poor circulation, arthritis, strokes, vitamin deficiencies, syphilis. Some body attachments, just like warts and old scars, are insensitive to pain.
Right.
Some victims may have just been trying to get it over with, and the prickers could have just been cheating from the start. Sir Walter Scott, in his letters on demonology and witchcraft, wrote, there is room also to believe that the professed prickers used a pen, the point or lower part of which was on being pressed down, sheathed in the upper, which was hollow for the purpose, and that which appeared to enter the body did not pierce it at all. So basically, stab you, it's a fake knife.
Yeah. Like the trick knives with the little spring in it when you're a kid.
Yep, exactly. Right. So this is from I just like the title of this article, The Professional Picker and His Test for Witchcraft. And this is a 1922 article in the Scottish Historical Review. And this guy said around 1650, Newcastle, England sent magistrates to Scotland to find a witch pricker. They brought one back telling him he could get 20 shillings for each witch he condemned, and he could have free passage back and forth. Then once he arrived, a man with a bell rode through town crying that all women who had complaints lodged against them for witchcraft should be sent for and tried by the pricker. 30 women were brought into the town hall. They were stripped in front of everyone and had pens thrust into their bodies. The pricker found 27 women guilty.
Holy moly, that's a big ratio.
The witch pricker told Lieutenant Colonel Hobson that he could tell if women were witches just by looking at them. When Hobson said of a woman that she was personable and good-like and clearly not a witch, the pricker disagreed and said she needed to be tried. He pulled her clothes over her head, then he jammed a pin into her thigh and yelled at her and wanting to know why she did not bleed. The accused was subsequently allowed to be tested again, and this time the pin gushed blood, and the pricker declared her not to be a child of the devil. He collected his money for the other 27 women he had doomed and traveled to Northumberland to repeat the trials. While there, he was nearly arrested for fraud and fled back to Scotland, where he was apprehended. He was condemned to the gallows, and there he confessed to being responsible for the death of 220 women in England and Scotland for the price of 20 shillings a person.
God.
Yeah. Scotland picked up the pace in their witch hunting in the years 1661 to 1662, which would become known as the Great Scottish Witch Hunt. It's estimated that 600 people were accused of sorcery and various acts of witchcraft in Scotland during this time. Brian Leavick in the Journal of British Studies noted that many historians attributed this case to the end of English rule in Scotland. So while England was in charge, the English judges did not like to execute suspected witches. Most of them just thought it was backwoods country-ish other things, so they just weren't being executed. So when Scotland took control of the judicial system back, then they had a quote unquote backlog of suspected witches that had to be put on trial. Between 1653 and 1657, there were only 12 executions. I would say only 12 executions of witches. And then during 1658 and 1659, it started going up. 1659 saw 38 executions in that year alone. So it went from being, 5 years we had 12, and now we have 38 in just 1 year.
That's a big jump.
It's a big jump. The clergy have also been blamed for the witch hunt, and they definitely played an active role. In the Kirk sessions, ministers and lay elders collaborated to perform the primary investigations of those detained for witchcraft. They facilitated searches of the Devil's Mart and gathered witness depositions prior to transferring these cases to the relevant secular authorities. So the clergy would often use torture to get confessions out of the witches, and then they would have to go on trial within the regular court, right? That was it wasn't like an Inquisition thing. But the church was like really up in this business. And so in 1661, the justiciary, the regular court, the secular court, was acquitting a witch, and the church already had a second set of charges ready to go to prevent her release, because there was like, no, she's a witch. On the other hand, the church was also taking the complaints from those who felt slandered for being called witches. Popular slander involving witchcraft, often constructed in pairs, included witch bitch, witch thief, ill favor glide, which means squint-eyed witch, and witch carling, essentially meaning an old witchy woman. Not part of this hunt time, but had to include. In 1628, Margaret Boyd complained to the Canongate Kirk section that Bessie Mason had called her a notorious witch, though in her defense, Mason explained that Boyd had called her a notorious whore first.
That's amazing.
At Newton, Midlothian, the church held a session in which they warned the witch pricker John Nielsen 3 times for calling Margaret Allen a bitch and a witch. They also said that nobody could slander a child of a person accused of witchcraft, and that applied to their friends as well. So they put a rule in saying, you've got to stop going after these kids and these witches. This is bad enough.
Yeah, the witch thing's bad enough. Please don't go after their children also.
Yeah, or their friends.
Yeah.
So 84% of the accused were adult females. Some, such as Agnes Johnston and Janet Cock, were midwives or healers. Widows such as Janet Lyle, Beatrix Leslie, Christian Patterson, and Margaret Porteous were particularly vulnerable to accusations of sorcery due to their advanced age and impoverished circumstances. Their eccentricities may have annoyed their neighbors to make them accuse them of being witches, which, I mean, you gotta be pretty annoying. Yeah, it is weird old ladies, right? Helen Cass is said to have been sexually promiscuous with English soldiers. Christian Wilson cursed on the Sabbath, and Helen Cockner fornicated with John Weissard. Oh, Helen. There are also neighborhood feuds that inspired some of the accusations. So one of them sought revenge for getting her hens killed. Another one was got into a fight over the raking of dung. Margaret Allen conceived malice and hatred toward Thomas Hoy because he had taken some of her husband's land. Jeez, why was she pissed? But most of the accused aligned with just that kind of traditional stereotype of an old woman. And the confessions taken by various means, again, kind of ran the gamut. I like this one. Mary Lamont confessed that she, Ketty Scott, and Margaret Holm came to Alan Orr's house in the likeness of cats and followed his wife into the chamber where they took a herring out of a barrel, took a bite, and left it. Then the wife ate the fish and she died. Margaret McWilliam confessed that around Candlemas, she went out to a field and there was a little brown dog that enticed her to follow. Then the dog appeared in the likeness of an attractive young man and wanted her to go with him and gripped her around her left hench, which hurt, and then the man went away in green smoke. On a sadder note, one said she knew that since she had been defamed as a witch, she was gonna starve, for no person would give her food and lodging, and the men in town had beat her, therefore she just wanted to die. And that was why she was confessing. Whoa. Another one said that she was afraid the devil would challenge his right to her after she was said to be his servant, and that he would haunt her, as a minister said when he was telling her to confess, and therefore she wanted to die. Which is like, so she got this poor, like confused old lady had some man being like, the devil's going to haunt you if you don't confess. And now she's afraid that's going to happen. It's so sad.
That's sad.
All right, last note. So this finally ends when the council issues a proclamation acknowledging that numerous suspected witches had been arrested, to prison, pricked, tortured, and mistreated, leading to the wrongful suffering of many innocent individuals. To address this, the council decreed that arrests of suspected witches required a specific warrant from the council, the justice general or his deputies, or local officials such as the sheriff, justices of the peace, steward, blah, blah, blah. So it banned, furthermore, though, it banned the practices of pricking and torture unless explicitly authorized by the council. So not altogether, and outlawed any other illicit methods for extracting confessions.
Well, they didn't want to ban it completely. They still had to have it.
They wanted to slow the roll because things were getting out of control. And these witch prickers had really made things so much worse, because they were just saying, we know these people can identify witches, we prick them. She's a witch, she's a witch, she's a witch. Okay. So demonstrating its commitment to the new policy, the council also jailed the famous witch prickers John Kincaid and John Dickson for their actions. John Kincaid was released on a large bond. He basically disappears. John Dickson's jailing, however, was slightly more interesting. So John, who had a contract up north where he was on retainer for 6 shillings a day, plus expenses, plus £6 for every witch he caught. And he was very rough. His procedure involved, you strip the witch naked, rub the body with the palms vigorously to pull up the marks. And during one of the witch hunts, this was so savage that a couple of people died just from the test. Not even from there, right? So, but one day he pricked a former messenger to the Privy Council, and that messenger wrote to Edinburgh complaining that John was pricking without the right license. John absconded to the Highlands, where a clan battle was underway as the Chisholms accused the MacLeans of sorcery. The chief of the MacLeans also reached out to Edinburgh. John was taken to the toll booth of Edinburgh, where it was discovered that John was a woman. Her real John Dickson was actually a woman masquerading as a man because she really wanted to catch witches. Her name was Christian Caddle, and she wanted the court to know that she didn't need her little witch pricker to know what a witch was. She could tell because she could see upside down crucifixes in the eyes of women who were witches. She was put on trial, not for being a witch pricker, but for having the audacity to wear pants. She was sent off to Barbados, That was
I
her.
forget that that's a punishment.
Yeah, so she was sent off to the colonies as a punishment.
Can
The
I get
day
sent
she
to
sailed
Barbados?
away, though, 2 of the women that she pricked, Isabel Eldora and Isabel Simpson, were still burned to death. Even though, like, they're clearly this. Not only is she not, she's not a band. So clearly she couldn't know what she was talking about.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, so over the course of the late 16th, 17th, and early 18th century, just under 4,000 women in Scotland were tried as witches, of whom 2,558 were executed. Pricks. So that's what the witch hunters of the 16th century were doing when they were looking for Scottish witches. Much like this man was looking for Rowena, and everyone is telling him Rowena is dead.